Ever felt frustrated being told PMS, heavy bleeding, and cramping are just normal parts of life? You are not alone. I loathed my monthly cycle for decades. That all changed when I earned 3 health coaching certifications, discovering something incredible. Your period is vital. It is an outward sign of your inner health, and it holds the key to unlocking your full potential. I've been there battling heavy, painful periods, and I turn them into cycles with minimal PMS and cramping. Today, I'm on a mission to share that information with you. Pour a cup of your favorite drink, get comfy, and grab your headphones as we embark on a candid and empowering journey of self-discovery. Together, we'll demystify menstrual cycles, explore cyclical living, delve into natural birth control, and guide parents through those crucial period talks with tweens and teens. It's time to break the taboo around menstruation and embrace the wisdom it holds. I'm your host, Heather Almendinger, and this is the Embracing Flow podcast. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on Embracing Flow. I'd like to introduce our guest today, an expert at Embracing Flow, Dena Farash. Dena, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me today.
I am excited for this conversation. Listeners, here is why Dena is joining us. Dena is a digital marketing and engagement pro. She is here to help moms confidently grow their business while she takes care of all the back-end tech work. With Dena managing the digital details, you can focus on working on your business, not in it. She empowers moms to feel cool, calm, and confident in their entrepreneurial journeys without guilt or overwhelm. As the founder of Dena Does Digital, Dena has created a space where moms learn how to leverage online marketing tools, systems, and automations to build thriving businesses from home. She shows women how to create personal fulfillment while growing their online presence. She's happily married and a mom of 3, and she believes in the power of balancing business and family. She shares her knowledge of digital marketing to help women become the best version of themselves while creating opportunities to raise resilient, confident children. And when she's not helping us moms streamline their digital marketing efforts, she is spending time at the gym with her girlfriends or enjoying her favorite treat, ice cream. Okay, favorite ice cream. I gotta know.
I don't have a favorite. That's such a tough question for me. But I will say I like ice cream with things in it. So if it's got like peanut butter cups in it or textures or some like chunky chewy in it, I'm probably gonna go towards that. Do you have a favorite ice cream?
I do. I kind of have like 2 or 3. Do you have it like a top 2 or 3?
Store-bought, I'm probably gonna go for like a Moose Tracks because it's got a little bit of everything and it's not an overwhelming, but I still get my chocolate in there. Or like chocolate chip cookie dough. Again, it's got to have like the textures and the things in it for sure. What about you?
I am a peanut butter brittle.
I've never even heard of that kind of ice cream.
It's peanut butter that's mixed in with the vanilla ice cream. So it's similar to a peanut butter cup, but it's with vanilla ice cream instead of chocolate because I like the vanilla ice cream with the peanut butter better than chocolate ice cream with the peanut butter. Now, I love Reese's peanut butter cups. So I love chocolate and peanut butter. But peanut butter Ripple, peanut butter brickle, whatever brand, that is probably one of my favorites along with butter pecan.
Okay.
So I'm kind of the nut side. I tend towards more nut flavored ice creams versus non-nut, which is, I don't know, that's just kind
embracing the flow.
Yeah. And it changes. It really changes with each phase. And when I'm hungry for ice cream or not. So thank you so much for sharing your favorite ice creams. And so now I know where to send stuff when
I'll take it.
Coupon for some ice creams. Before we dive into this beautiful digital marketing thing and entrepreneurship that you do to help us moms remain cool, calm, and confident in our businesses, would you be open to sharing one of your first cycle stories and about what age did you start cycling?
Sure. I love that this is the opener to these questions because it takes me right out of my comfort zone, right? But it's a similar experience that all of us women have in common, and that's a really wonderful way to tie everything together. You know, I was 13 years old, so I think for nowadays that's on the later edge, although I don't know.
Average. About
I was
average.
13 years old, and I remember it's so interesting because I knew you were going to ask me this question. So I was thinking a little bit about it. I had this old pack of underwear. I'm the daughter of an immigrant. And when my grandparents first came over to bring their family over to this country, they worked in a factory and they sewed clothes in the factory. And so my mom brought into her marriage and into her family this package of old underwear that was created in one of these factories that my grandparents worked in. And I remember like around 12, 13 years old, I started wearing this underwear. And it's so bizarre that this is what I'm correlating it to. But I remember I had my first period in that underwear and it just looked like some brown discharge. And I remember walking into one of the upstairs bedrooms in our house and sharing with my mom, I think I got my period and showing it to her. And she said, yep, that's it. And that was the full experience.
Overall, honestly, that is kind of one of the tamer stories that I've heard. So that is fantastic that you've had more of a tame introduction to your reproductive years. Uh, and some of the reason why I asked that question is so that way, if any listeners have had that tame experience, something similar, they don't feel alone. Or if they've had the experience that they didn't know what was going on, or they kind of heard about it but didn't know what to experience or what to expect, and they thought they were dying. I've had
Mm,
that they went to the bathroom, saw the blood, thought they were dying, because they didn't really know what was going on. So it's bridging that gap and letting all the listeners understand we may not be alone in our journeys with our first cycles. 13 is about average. So the earliest I've heard, believe it or not, is 7. And latest is usually 16, 17, sometimes 18, depending on what their experiences are growing up. And that's a whole other conversation.
yeah, wow.
I am not here to share those conversations today. We are going to dive into how did you get into being this marketing genius and working with moms, and how can, and from there we'll kind of go into some other questions because I know I can get a lot of information from and ideas from what you're going to share.
Yeah, so it's a layered question, and so I'll start at the beginning. I kind of fell into this digital space on accident. When my first child was born, I thought for sure that I was always going to be somebody that went back to work, and I was working for a startup at the time, and I remember just for fun wheeling my daughter into the startup when she was about 5 weeks old, and I was sitting across the desk from two men, the bosses, and I have my infant, my brand new baby right next to me, my newborn. And I was hearing her crying. I was showing them my baby, and they were dads themselves. So everybody was celebrating the fact that I had just had this child. And I looked right up at them and I said, I cannot come back here. Completely unplanned. By the way, 10 out of 10, don't recommend. My husband was not very happy with that choice. But I just knew in my heart, and I'm the type of person where if it's heavy on my heart, I just blurt it out of my mouth. Sometimes that works to my benefit, sometimes it does not. So I kind of just quit sight unseen. I wound up going back very part-time, maybe about 15, 16 hours a week, but I just knew being in that environment and bringing my newborn there that I couldn't leave her. So when I left, I actually started a stroller fitness program in my area. I bought into a franchise. I started a stroller fitness program and I built it to the third largest in the country at the time. And lo and behold, I got pregnant with my second child. And he was born, and still to this day, I call him my life's biggest blessing because in his birth and my transition of going from one child to two, I lost myself completely. I had a very, very rough time understanding that my life now was just a mom, and I really really struggled. And the way I reacted, if you couldn't guess, based fully on emotion, is I made my entire home miserable. Right, I resented my husband. I would wake up just regretting my life, and already being upset about the amount of diapers I was going to have to change for the day, or the hours that I was going to have to sit on the couch breastfeeding. And really, in a pit of despair, I turned toward meditation as a way to start to feel better. And I was in a very vulnerable state, as you can imagine, as many moms go through. And so I really wanted to embrace meditation in a very successful way. And so when I made this deal with myself to bring in meditation, I knew I had to be very intentional because I just could not handle one more thing on my to do list that was going to make me feel like a failure again. And so I told myself that I was going to meditate for 5 minutes a day, just for 30 days. And I was just going to see what happens in my life. And within 2 weeks of being really consistent with this practice, my perspective of my life started to change. I recognized for the first time in all of my motherhood that I had the wrong mindset about it. Instead of being really aware and grateful for the fact that I had the biggest blessing of my life, which were healthy children, right? Because that's the whole sentence. My healthy children are the biggest blessing of my life. But I was so caught up and I was so selfish in my own transition and the pangs of it that I forgot to see that all the time. I neglected to see that I had a husband who, no matter what, got up and went to work, who accepted me when I said, oh, by the way, I'm not going back to my job where I was making really good money, and just decided to pick up the entire financial burden of our house. And so within 2 weeks of meditating, I just had these moments of reflection and a deeper awareness of what was happening in my head and how it was directly tied to my emotions and how that was directly tied to how I was responding and creating my family life. And so, really, just on a whim, I started talking about it online. And I created a Facebook group and I called it the Mindful Mom Revolution. And within 2 days, I had over 100 members in there. Now, I had already had this audience of moms because I had the stroller fitness program, but it turned out, at least in my mind, it turned out that other people wanted to feel better in motherhood and they wanted to explore more mindful practices, more holistic practices in order to do so. And so over the years, I grew that group to a few thousand women, and that allowed me to host in-person workshops. It allowed me to create an email list of thousands of people where I was just sharing meditations and courses and really just expand my reach coming from a place of a teacher, which was a mistake, by the way, and hopefully if there's time we'll get into that. But coming from this place of a teacher instead of an imperfect mom. And in order to do that, I had to become web savvy. I had to figure out all of these nuances, these behind the scenes, because as an entrepreneur, your mind works a lot faster than what you can actually create and produce. And so my mind would work really fast, and I try to find somebody who can do these things for me because, again, I had two young children, and then I wound up having another third on the way. I had two young children. I had a very limited amount of time, right? And I had a very limited amount of know-how of how to create these opt-in pages and these forums and how to build these websites. And so in the interim of wanting to find fulfillment for myself, because I did find a lot of fulfillment in coming into this role and wanting to help so many people, I spent a lot of money that we didn't have to do all of the tech. Right. And if anybody here is an online entrepreneur thinking about it, it's either a stressful headache for you and you wind up quitting and giving up, or you offset it and you wind up paying somebody else to do it. And so because my mind works so quickly and I had all these ideas, I was constantly shelling, like offshooting the tech end of things until I finally had to turn the mirror on myself and say, it's time or money, and which one can I sacrifice? And we were at the place in our lives where we couldn't sacrifice any more money on me building my dreams. And so I had to really take the time to figure out the tech, and most importantly, figure out how to not get stressed by the tech, and create these systems that allow me and now other people to leverage their time, to automate their work, to still be of service to so many people without being a slave to the computer screen or the phone and the things that actually don't matter, but just work as tools so that we can share our messages with the world.
I love that because I know I fall into that as well. It's like, I want to do this, I want to do that, but I know I have to update my website.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes me hours to update my
Yeah.
website. I'm learning to script because there's things that I want to use it for. And it's like, I was paying for it. I was paying for somebody else to do stuff with it. I'm like, hello, just learn how to do it. But then it's, do I have the time?
Right.
It's time or money. Exactly. And I know I'm not the only one. I know you're not the only one that has been in that. So I love that you've learned how to do this and you're sharing it now with with others.
I do. I don't believe in gatekeeping this information because I spent many years, again, just shelling out money we didn't have, number one, but then also getting really, really frustrated with tech and having that ruin my day. Again, this is part of my life's lessons, right? To reflect upon my emotions and how I'm allowing that storm to impact the people that I care about the most. But tech can stress you out. That's just the reality. It's not always going to go the way that you want it to go. But, and this is a strong but, all of these systems, all of these platforms are built with intention. They all have customer service and support, which is another wonderful thing. So I don't reinvent the wheel. I don't believe in reinventing the wheel because there are platforms and systems and tools that allow us to get our message across in an effective way. And if you can manage your own emotions, which thankfully I've been on that journey with mindfulness and meditation and now tech, I've been on that journey for a really long time. If you can manage your emotions around it, you can start to learn it and adapt to it with ease. I will share one of the things that I do for many people because I work with coaches, consultants, and therapists is I stress them you can't be working in your business and on your business at the same time. So I am the person who can come in to help you work on your business so that you can continue to share your message and spread your wings and work one-on-one with your clients and give them your absolute best without the overwhelm and the stress of doing all the behind the scenes work.
You had mentioned meditation. So is there specific ones that you use now, how many years later, that you used in the beginning? Is it something that you've kind of just grown as you've grown with your meditation? Because you said those first 2 weeks, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's something I want to get more involved with. I do have a meditation, but I'm not consistent with it, which
Mhm.
is, I think, consistent across the board with a lot of individuals. But did you start with certain meditations and then grow, or are you still using the same kind of meditations as you did when you first started?
My preference always has been just a self-guided meditation, right? Where I bring in some type of mantra or affirmation as I breathe in and I breathe out. And don't get me wrong, when you first do something like that, when you cue into what's happening in your head, it's terrifying and it's overwhelming and you think that you're doing it wrong. But I did spend many years teaching moms meditation and mindfulness. And so I would cycle through with them because I think it's important for everybody to try what works best for them. I'd cycle through things like a guided meditation on YouTube. I'd cycle through binaural beats and then I'd have weeks where they could choose their own. But for me personally, the most powerful place for me to come to in meditation is holding my mind captive, as the Bible says time and time again, and coming back to that place where I can have the awareness that a thought is popping into my head and then choosing instead to focus on my breath. That's my preference always. Again, sometimes I do it with an affirmation or a mantra, something that helps me prepare for the day or just feel guided by God in those moments. But that for me has always been what is my go-to because the reality is I can focus on my breath, I can focus on a mantra, and I can do that anywhere I am at all times. Nobody even has to know I'm doing it, whether I'm at the supermarket or driving in the car or making dinner for my kids. I can always come back to that place without needing to turn on something guided, without needing to put headphones on for binaural beats. But so that's always my preference.
I I'm getting, as I said, I'm getting into it myself, and there are times that I'll turn on the guided, and I'm like, nope, that's
Mm-hmm.
not helping me. That's actually making more noise in my head than what I
Mm-hmm.
need. And then I'll turn off the noise. I'll turn off any music. And I'll just sit.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's just, as you said, just breathing. It focuses on that breathing. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out, and it does help. It really does. It really interesting ideas have come into my head out of nowhere that I needed just by
Mm-hmm.
doing that.
Yeah, they say that prayer is when you talk to God and meditation is when God gets to talk to you. I'll just share because I think it's appropriate. One of the things I loved most about meditation and what I used to share to my community of moms is that meditation has been proven to actually shrink certain areas in our brain and enlarge others. So, meditation over 8 weeks' time, and really only if that's 5 minutes a day, will shrink the part of your brain that has you always operating from this place of reactivity. And it grows the part of your brain that allows you to have perspective and groundedness and calm. And so the scientific benefits, the neuroplasticity of what it does to the gray areas of your brain are unbelievable. And I know for me, my own self, especially in my motherhood journey, I needed that. I needed more calm. I needed more perspective. I needed more groundedness, because if you haven't guessed already, I operate from this place in my heart. I operate oftentimes from this place of aggression and anger. And I've made a lot of really bold decisions that haven't always been the most fruitful for me and my family because of it. And so learning the neuroplasticity of it and understanding that meditation rewires your brain for more perspective, to me, just lights me up at all times, and it makes it a non-negotiable in my daily day.
When you went from, I mean, you said you had a group of moms, and I'm guessing that that group has changed focus, that that's not your main focus anymore. When working with those moms, because I know, like I said, I'm a mom entrepreneur, and I know that my listeners are. Uh, all right, I just had a complete little moment there. I know I'm in my little phase. I get squirrel brain. My brain stops working. So, all right. When working with moms, you help them stay confident, cool, and kind of collect calm while raising resilient children. What are some things that you helped with your mom's group? What did you do? How did you help us do that?
I think the first thing, and you and I were talking about this off camera too. The first thing that I know that I had to do is I had to really take ownership in the fact that it was my temperament, my mood, my emotions that were making my family miserable. It was me making my family miserable, not the gifts of my wonderful children. They were just being children and they had needs, and it was my duty now to respond as a caretaker. And that was really hard for me. So I know in my own personal story, the toughest thing I had to do was really take ownership in the fact that I was making my own life miserable. But the way I was able to flip that was more towards empowerment. If I am the problem, that also means that I can be the solution. It's not up for my husband to be the solution and to get me the maid and the chef that I thought that I was doing this lifetime as a stay-at-home mom. And it's not up for my children to be anything but children. It's really up to me to take control of my own self and my own emotions. And so when I worked with moms in that space, that's where we started, right? Where does life not feel good? And how can we take ownership of that? And how can we flip the script a little bit, reframe these stories so that they become empowering? The next two things that I really realized were lacking in so many of in this modern day motherhood. There were two things. There were two things, and I still firmly believe this, that lacks in modern day motherhood, because we're so addicted to the scroll and this comparison train, is that no, so many moms are completely out of touch with what their values are, right? And their values are so flippant because of what they see through the screen or on Instagram. And we think we need to be baking sourdough every day and have an all white room in our living room. My number one rule of motherhood is don't wear white, right? Like that's not it's not my value. My value is not to come off as this preen and pristine person, because that's inauthentic to who I am. So I think the first thing that I did with many, not I think, what we did most of the time is we just got really clear on what our values were, right? And we understood where we were in alignment with that and where we were out of alignment with them. And now one of the ways that helped me transition, especially to what I do right now, and the majority of my clients are moms who are supporting other women or other moms in some way, whether it's weight loss, perimenopause, coaching, consulting. And again, I have a huge roster of therapists that I work with who, by the way, all specialize in working with moms. Is that women nowadays are just completely unfulfilled, right? And we don't know why and we don't know how. But my generation and your generation, we were some of the first that were told we had to go to college, right? There wasn't a choice. Again, I'm the daughter of an immigrant who still came to this country and got advanced degrees and master's degrees and had a successful career. And so when I was growing up, college wasn't an option. It wasn't an option. I was going to college. I wound up getting a scholarship, and I would see these women, whether it was through my stroller fitness program or the Mindful Mom Revolution, or even now all of these women that are emerging into this coaching and consulting space, especially online. And there's a pull. Biologically, I think so many of us want to be home with our babies. We want to be the caretaker, but then we have this societal noise that says, but you went to school for 4 years, but you got this advanced degree, but you have all of this college debt. And so women nowadays are really lacking this fulfillment because they're told if you're a stay-at-home mom, that's not good enough. You're just a mom. And I know I fell in that trap, and that doesn't make anybody feel good. Or then they're told they go back to work and their kids are in daycare and they're told that that's not good enough because now you have strangers raising your children. And as mothers and as women, we're constantly pulled between what we want to do and what we should be doing. We don't know if we should be listening to our head or our heart or some stranger on the internet. And it's really a scary place for women to be. And when you think about it, the most important role that we have ever is that of a mother, right? And motherhood is so much more than a role. It's a relationship that we get to create with hands down the most important people in our lives. But it's so conflicting because we don't know. We're taught not to listen to our own truth anymore, right? We're taught to listen to the financial truth of the debt that we've been in because of college. We're told to listen to the financial truth of, oh, but the mortgage, oh, but the bills, oh, but the 2,000 square foot house and the SUV and all of these things that we're told are success in this world. And so overall, what's lacking in motherhood in general is coming from this place of fulfillment. You know, if you want to be just a stay-at-home mom, if you want to be a caretaker as your primary role and relationship in this world, let that be good enough for you. If you feel like you have a message to share and you know that God put in your heart that you're here to help other people and inspire others, let that be good enough and pursue it unapologetically. And so when I was working with minds in mindfulness, it was about uncovering first what our values were, understanding how we were spending our time, if they were in line with our values or not in line with our values, and then understanding what actually helps us feel fulfilled. And also, by the way, giving ourselves permission to say, hey, motherhood is my biggest blessing, but it doesn't fulfill me fully, right? Because that's where I was and that's where I struggled. Motherhood is my biggest blessing, but it's not my end all be all. I need to be having conversations like this. I need to be of service to other people. I need to be teaching and inspiring and talking about mindfulness and meditation because that's where I find my sense of self outside of this role of caretaker and mom. And so the work that I did then is so similar to what I do now. It's about helping giving women permission to lean into what their feel good is, right? Give them permission to pursue their fulfillment unapologetically. And now I just help by actually doing the physical work. Well, it's the online work of taking the stress away of that so that we can shine while we are raising our children, while we are creating our families, and while we are stepping unapologetically into these relationships with the people that are going to mean the most of us for the rest of our lives. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense because I've seen myself in those situations. It's I have advanced degrees and it's you're going to go to college, you need to do
Mm-hmm.
this. We're taught to be little men and we are not,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to push ourselves into a logical mind when we are emotional beings. I love being a mother. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I tried it and I love my children, but I hated being a stay-at-home mom. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like cooking. I don't like cleaning. I prefer to be out in the yard, cutting wood, pulling weeds, playing in the dirt. That's where I like to be. I don't like cleaning. And I'm noticing my kids don't like cleaning either. But I have that heart of service. So what you're sharing very much resonates specifically with me, and I'm sure others as well. Once you changed your mindset, how did your children's perspective? I'm sure you saw a change in your children and watching them see mom in a different light. What were some of those changes that you saw as you started your own journey and then helping the moms group with their journey and seeing that change with your children?
You know, I think I'd like to hope that I created a more secure attachment between them and myself. And really, the work was all 100% in me. but because I was able at times, not perfection at all, but because I was able at times to manage my own reactions to their emotions better, I'd like to say that their willingness to come to me, to need me, flourished even more. And it's interesting because I started, especially the stroller fitness program, when my oldest was 5 months old. And so my children have always witnessed me in some type of leadership role. And I like to think that witnessing that and being even as tiny babies in a stroller, witnessing their mom as an instructor, as a teacher, and even when they witness me at the kitchen table having conversations like this and teaching people, that they know that that's something that's within them too. I think my number one goal as a mom is to raise resilient and confident kids. And the only way that I can ensure that my children are that way is to model it for them. And I don't know so much as they've changed, but my responses to how they were as these little developing human beings changed. And I can only hope and pray that sets our family up for success as they get older, as they go through puberty, as they go to college, if that's what they choose, and spread their wings. I always want them to know that home is your safe space, and that I do have unconditional love for them. And the path that I was on originally was not going to share that with my children. And so I needed to really do a lot of that difficult work of growth. And for me, like keeping my mouth shut, which is also very difficult for me. So so that I can always be that safe space for them, and so that they can grow into resilient, confident human beings who are teachers, who know that they are here for a purpose, who chase their fulfillment unapologetically, because we only have this one life to live. And the only way I can help my children and inspire them to reach for their goals and dreams is if I'm brave enough to do that for myself.
Yeah. Hearing you talk, I hear you've brought a lot of balance. You've shown that you can do your passion and share your heart of service with others, but still be there for your children. That they know that there is that balance, that it's not one or the other. I I, I know growing up there are some that becoming that the value is the big house and the cars and stuff, but you don't see that one parent as you have these things where you're showing you can have both. You're sharing that you can have those values that you, the big house or the cars or whatever materialistic things that you want, be it big or small, but you have that balance and you can have that balance, and you're helping others develop that balance so they can be the best version of themselves, but they can also be their showing the best version of themselves to their children and their spouse, and it's a happier home.
Yeah, and listen, it's not perfection. My children check me all the time. I've worked in the digital space really since the onset of my motherhood, and because of that, I'm constantly on my phone. My children look at me and say, "But you're on Facebook all the time." And I'm like, "You don't understand. I'm working, right?" And so their perspective of my work is so different than dad, who gets up and leaves the house at 6 o'clock in the morning and doesn't get back sometimes till after 6 o'clock at night. When dad's at work, he's at work. He comes home and he can compartmentalize. For me, I work around my family's schedule, and I've been blessed by God to be able to create systems that allow me to work around my family schedule. Although sometimes that does bleed into my responsibilities as a mom, and so my children are so gracious in that way. Even when we don't want to hear it, they let me know when I'm on my phone too much. They let me know when they are demanding my attention and I'm giving it to somebody else, because to them it's not tangible. To them, it's just the screen and the scroll. And so while they may not understand what I'm producing and what I'm managing and how I'm supporting people that way, what they see is that I'm not connected with them in those moments. And so I appreciate you saying that, but I just want people to know for sure there's no perfection in this at all. And our children will always check us when the pendulum swings too far in one direction.
Yes, they are very good at that. My younger one uh has he's he's like, "Mom, can I play this on my Switch or my computer?" And I was like, "No, not right now. You have to focus on this." But Mom, you're always on your phone. And it's
Same conversations.
yeah,
Yeah.
same conversations. And then it checks me. It's like, okay, am I actually doing income producing activities on my phone at this moment,
hmm
or can this wait?
Yeah.
And so he's very good at checking me on that. My older son, he doesn't say that because a lot of his growing up, I was in the corporate world. My younger son, a lot of his life so far has been me in the entrepreneurial world. So my sons have seen different parts of their mom. And I know in my corporate world, I was focused on the value I brought to the corporate
hmm
side of things and my employer. And the hard thing for me was I was replaceable. It took a long time for me to realize that if something happens to me, I can be replaced in a week or two.
hmm
To my family, though, I cannot be replaced. And my older son kind of reminded me of that. And he's like, Mom, you weren't here for this, or Mom, you weren't here for that. And I'm like, I only have 18 years of being in this young man's life. And right now, I just realized in late 2024 that the summer of 2025 is my last summer with him
Aw.
before he is off doing his own life. And that has hit hard. I'm like, 18 years, 18 summers. Oh, that's not, I've got plenty of time, plenty of time, plenty. And I realized I don't have his 18th summer. He's going to be military. So he's going off into the military
Wow.
before, like, as soon as he graduates, he's probably already going to be going to wherever he's going to be stationed. So I don't have that summer like I would if he'd be going to college or going non military. I have this summer between his junior and senior year. So that has been a big, huge wake up call for me as a
Yeah.
mom that he was raised in corporate. In the last few years, I've been spending a lot more time because I know my time with him here in my home is limited. And it's already, his father and I are divorced. So I only get half that time to begin with. So my time
hmm
now is really tiny. And so what you were sharing with your kids and how they will tell you, he's not as blunt about it as my younger one, but I'm seeing it and I'm feeling it. And I'm like, wow, okay, where am I in alignment with my business? Where am I out of alignment? And how can I get in alignment with what I want to do while still giving time to them and still giving time to my partner? And so this has been an absolutely fantastic conversation because it's in a way I'm listening to you, but I'm looking at myself in that mirror going, oh, okay, there's some stuff that I'm not perfect by any means. um, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would love to share with the listeners?
I think I mentioned it a little bit before. I really think, well, first and foremost, right, our greatest gifts in this world are our children, right? And sometimes we lose sight of it because life is busy and we think the priorities are different and life is very fast. There are a lot of things to do to raise resilient, confident children. And we forget along the way that some of the most important things we can do are just be present with them because that's hard and uncomfortable at times too, right? And we forget along the way that if we don't pursue our own personal fulfillment, that feels a lot tougher too. And I mentioned it before, but I think it's worth to say again, you can only teach your children to pursue their passions and to live their dreams if you're brave and courageous enough to do it for yourself. And at some point, we have to stop living by the rules and the stories that society tells us and be unapologetic about pursuing who we're here to help, why we're here to help them, and how we can.
Yeah, yeah. And if someone would have told me 5 years ago I'd be working and talking about periods, I would have looked at them like, you are out of your gourd, really, because I hated mine. I wanted it gone. But it is funny how once I got in alignment and I listened to that voice, it's like, no, this is your space. And it's like, oh, okay, new territory for me. And people have seen a change in me since coming into this space, and I feel comfortable in this space. It took a little bit. I'm still working on it. I'm not perfect about it, but definitely am hearing what you're saying and understand it. And it's not an easy journey. I know your journey wasn't easy getting to where you're at, and mine hasn't been either. Yet I believe we've shared a very good message with the listeners that even though you're going to get some bumps and bruises, it's a beautiful journey to take, because it will open up things that you never dreamed possible. Where can individuals find you to help with the tech? So that way they can be more in their business versus trying to be stressed about it.
Yeah, yeah. All right. And pursue their passions unapologetically. That's really how I like to look at the work that I do. So my website is denadoesdigital.com. It's Dena, Dena. I also do a lot of sharing of my own stories, of my own twisted, imperfect path on Facebook. And you can find me there under Dena Farash. I'm on all social media accounts, but that's where I do the most of my sharing because I love to write. I believe that we all deserve to feel a little less guilty, a little less shame in our lives as women and moms. And I believe that without a doubt, we owe it to our children and our families to pursue our own personal fulfillment. But most of all, we owe it to ourselves.
I agree. Is there any wise words of wisdom? I mean, you have given us so many nuggets. Is there any additional wise words of wisdom for us to take with us today?
You know, what's that old adage that the days are long, but the years are short. And so try to be as present as possible, but most important, practice gratitude on a daily basis because our biggest blessings grow right in front of our eyes. And before we realize they're leaving the house and they're turning into men and women that will hopefully share the love that they received in their homes with the world. And with that love, they can change the world.
That hits home in so many different ways, and such wonderful, amazing words for us to end on. Thank you, Dena, for taking us on this journey into how you got to where you're at. There's been so much information that you gave that each of us can implement in different ways into our lives, and just reminding us that, basically to quote Whitney Houston, the children are our future.
That's right.
They are our legacy. They really, truly are. And we can have that balance between being the badass bosses and women that we are, while and climbing that corporate ladder and hitting the pinnacles that we have, yet being present in our lives with our families and with our children. We just have to find that balance, and there is a balance, and we can do it. And you have reminded us of that. So thank you very much for taking us on that journey.
Thanks so much for having me, Heather.
All of the links that Dena shared with us are going to be in the show notes. So thank you, listeners, for spending your time with us today. If you found a nugget of wisdom, and there were so many today, or a moment of empowerment, our mission is accomplished. Do you know someone who could benefit from embracing flow? Please share the podcast with them. Until next time, love hard, laugh often, and as always, be vividous. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, submit a rating and review, and share it with your friends. Visit my website, embracingflowpodcast.com, to receive your free guide on 4 ways to decrease PMS. The link is in the show notes. Information shared on the Embracing Flow podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. Until next time, love hard, laugh often, and always be vividus.